it open. All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. I'm Mike, your host, Movie Hangout here today, Gattaca, and I'd like to welcome my magnificent guest I have here today, Victor.
Hello,
Victor's
everyone.
from Sweden.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, Victor. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
So we're looking at the movie Gattaca here, and seeing how it's just me and Victor. It's not a panel of discussion today here. I was thinking that me and Victor would just have a back and forth exchange where the floor is open for us both to throw questions back both ways. Let's just begin with Victor. How about you just give us like a quick run through of the movie for anybody who hasn't seen it, the spoilers, so to speak.
Okay, so we're in some form of future or alternate reality where, in the same time as we are now. But in this era or particular dimension, they have, really developed some skills in terms of being able to, through samples of blood, sort of investigate and see what type of life that you're going to live in terms of intellect, physical stamina and condition, mental condition, the works, so to speak. So what happens initially is that the main character is conceived through natural birth or through, normal sex, as we can call it. And the resulting body, what happens is that his body and mental condition, etc., is really bad. He has, as he is born, he gets diagnosed with having probably a heart failure at around 30 years of age. And then we progress a little bit, and then his brother is born, and now his brother is born through this genetic manipulation. It's called in vitro reproduction, I think, where you find a little egg and you say, this is the best specimen, and then you sort of do that one. Okay, but anyway, so main character is so-called degenerate, he is a little bit, yeah. So he is basically locked out from society, from getting to the elite jobs and positions, because everyone, to get to a position, you do a screening test, and the thing that determines whether you're getting or not is the blood type, your DNA. That is what determines it. And because his blood, his composition really sucks, and he wants to get into one of these elite positions, he wants to become an astronaut, he has to go into this entire, story where he basically changes identity. So he steals the blood, or not steals, but in a sort of, what's it called? He collaborates with an elitist guy that is bored of life to get access into his favorite profession thingy. And then the movie kind of spins from there, where it's like a fight for him to remain in that position and keep his identity hidden. So, is that good enough?
Yeah, that was pretty thorough, I'd say. So yeah, a lot of relationship plays here. So what do you have to say about competition with regards to sibling rivalry? Because that's kind of like an early theme in the movie. We see we see Vincent, the main character, who isn't basically the specialized specimen. He's just born the generic way, and his brother, who's 2 years younger than him, is the specialized specimen. And we see at a very early age, like you're mentioning, that he's more perfect than them. How do you see the relationship? Like, what was your perspective on their relationship development through the point of competition?
Yeah, well, one point that's interesting is that they compete by swimming. That's one recurring event. They say, "Oh, we're gonna swim out into the sea," and the one that gives up first, he's the loser. And so, obviously, the more genetically perfect brother always tends to win. And so, I mean, this is interesting from the perspective that it shows how competition is really never a real competition because it's been determined somewhere else. And we can see this, for example, in school. When we go to school and we compete who gets the best grade. I mean, it's no real competition, in fact, because those that do get the best grades, I mean, it's a myriad of dimensions. It's their genetics, it's their upbringing, it's their parents' occupation, blah, 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 blah. So it's interesting, thus, that we compete on these things like I run the fastest or I swim the fastest and or I'm the smartest thinker, not realizing that all such competitions are really, they are not real, in fact, because I mean it's impossible for two individuals to actually compete in something and sort of be able to say, okay, you're the best. Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective. That it reminds me to having at times reflected on sporting competitions and really looked at the point that so often in the competition, the game against one another, it's not about the person being the winner so much as it is about the other being the loser from the point that they made mistakes. Like that's kind of what determines the winning. So, in that regard, to a certain extent, it's already, like you say, kind of set when you refer to like education that, going into the test, the student already has like set amount of information or whatnot, and they're going to perform within, said range kind of thing. Now, what's interesting about, let's say, testing at school, and I know through lots of discussions I've had with people and my own personal experience is that even though, and I would say this holds true with, sporting competitions and maybe what makes it legitimate or kind of like random into who is the winner, is that there's a sense of peer pressure that often comes into play, that even though your natural ability or whatever your developed skill, you might not even exercise that full potential when given the opportunity due to just kind of, well, basically added pressure and stress you put upon yourself when it comes to the
Yeah.
moment of application.
Yeah.
Though, do you see, like, I guess, any practicality with the main character Vincent? Because even though it was set that he was to lose anyway, he did. He had a pretty good spirit about the whole thing. Like, yeah, let's go, let's keep going. And
Mm.
he kind of had an opportunistic mindset where, well, I'm not expected to win, so why don't I just give her my all anyways, and let's see what happens. Whereas, believing, basically questioning or challenging his own belief that he's not supposed to win, but can I win, kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, in terms of how he got the information, it was from these doctors.
Right.
And, it was only percentages he got. Like, there is a 90% percentage chance that you're going to be like this. And there is a da 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 da. So it was nothing, written in stone. And I guess, I mean, that's a cool example to, regardless of, what condition you find yourself in, to not give up unless you've actually given it your all.
For sure. And that we see later on that that's kind of what, you know, his secret was when the two brothers are like older and they're doing the race again after the brother is like realized like Vincent's been the guy in the system who's been like the invalid, so to speak, is that he never held back, that whenever they were swimming, he was giving it his all. Like he never saved anything back to return to shore. It was kind of like, here I am now in this moment. I gotta push myself to the fullest.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting statement because it's like I don't leave room for any back doors.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I go, I go.
Yeah, it definitely reflected to me, you know, the whole destiny process that we're walking here with, the point of till here no further. Like, you know, when I make a decision within a point to change something, you know, that's that. Like it's a decision I'm committed to, and you know, it's like let's go for it here. We're doing this. We're moving this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool point, and I can say that it's not often that I have gotten to that point where, you know, you make a decision and you're so absolutely determined that you just know that, okay, this is, you know, already when you make the decision, okay, this is done.
For sure.
But, and it would be cool to sort of, you know, develop that ability to be like that with, you know, every time you make a decision. So it's like, okay, gotta move it, you know, let's do it.
Yeah, definitely. I totally relate to that because, you know, I look at some points that I developed, and it really only came about through trial and error, where it's kind of like, you know, there was some dishonesty within myself to a certain extent where, you know, I wasn't totally getting to the whole like root, bottom of the point where, you know, I had intention to want to follow through with a particular decision, but it's kind of like I didn't understand the scope of the decision and all the feelings and emotions that I had connected to making said decision. And through time, I would be tested and faced with such points that, well, was rather revealing, and which ultimately led to me being certain and affirmative within the decision, and to eventually get that standing point of I've got this. But so go ahead.
No.
I was just gonna say, I guess, you know, it shows that, you know, some decisions, just the way the nature of our mind programming here is they're more deeply rooted, and there's just more unconscious dimensions to some of them than there is others. Like, you know, to put it like super simply, we're talking about a decision that, like, I got this. You know, you make the decision to go grab, you know, a drink from the fridge. It's a pretty easy decision.
I got this, man.
It's like, I got this.
Let's do it, man.
I'm putting ice cubes in that drink.
There's no fucking turning back. No.
You sure about that? I got this. No, I'm definitely putting ice cubes in that drink.
Wow, so awesome, man.
So yeah, that's cool to see that, you know, decisions, there's definitely like a range and a spectrum into considerations that go into some decisions.
Yeah, but when you said that, I can relate to some decisions that I've made. And, you know, I made the decision, and then some months later I was, no, I'm not going to do it. And then, okay, no, I do it. And then, blah, 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 and then back and forth, and until finally you're like, okay, I have had enough, you know. And now and then it's like, no, now I do it. And then, and then you get to that point actually where you don't go back anymore. So, you know, trial and error, and then finally you sort of get to that point. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating how that works, really, because, you know, really it's kind of like you say, that point of like, okay, I'm tired of this. It's it's basically, you know, recognizing how we've been kicking our own ass within that indecision we're allowing to linger with On the Point as that conflictual back and forth.
Yeah.
And yeah, really, I mean, if we look at it, it's a matter of conflict resolution, so to speak. Okay. Well, that's a cool area that we've been looking at. I mean, there's so many areas in this movie to really kind of dive into.
Yeah.
What we talked about education a little bit there. Is there anything you'd like to elaborate on, like in this movie, with regards to education? Definitely is a pretty big theme, I'd say.
Yeah, well, one point would be sort of how we allow education and the grades we receive in education to determine our self-worth, our, you know, what we believe we're capable of in life. And we talked earlier about this main character and his dream being to become an astronaut. And he was, you know, he didn't have the grades for it. If we are to put what happened in the movie onto the conditions we face in our society, you know, because his blood was basically his grades from school. But it's interesting that, you know, in that he completely limited himself and sort of had this tunnel vision that, no, I have to become an astronaut and get these grades so that I can go this way. Though, you know, when you realize that, okay, you don't have to follow that conventional route, and that if there isn't good enough grades, usually there are other opportunities. It's just about sort of widening the horizons and seeing the resources that we have and that we can work with.
For sure. Yeah, that's a very cool example, because, you know, it's almost like it's pushing in the movie. It's kind of pushing the notion that well, if you want something, you should get it, and you should go to whatever length necessary to get it, even if you have to lie, cheat, steal. Basically,
Yeah.
if that's your feeling, that's your motive, so be it. And I mean, we even see in the movie there's like really little regard for the murder that happens to the guy who apparently knew about, you know, his identity. Even though he didn't kill him, it's kind of like, ah, well, like, yeah, he's dead, that's out of the way, that's fucking great, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, he didn't care. It's like, oh, problem solved, I didn't even dirty my hands. It's like, oh, that just too convenient. Like, I couldn't have worked out any better. Which kind of, you know, in the movie, that point just kind of gets glossed over as like, oh yes, murder in my favor, thumbs up.
Yeah.
And you know, just, and then that point's continued like later on, where, you know, when he's out with the female character there, Uma Thurman, and there's like a crackdown where they're kind of closing in on potentially catching him. And, you know, it's just kind of like, it kind of presents the notion that, you know, he had no choice. He had to, you know, punch the cop out so that he could, you know, protect his self-interest, which is kind of interesting parallels, because the way it was like interwoven in the movie, you know, it supports just the notion of kind of the way things work in this world, that, you know, if you look at the wars and whatnot that exist, it's kind of like, you know, self-interest must go ahead at all costs, like whatever the loss is necessary in order for you to, you know, get the profit of your win, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that the end justifies the mean.
Yeah. And I know that was kind of, you know, it wasn't like a, well, pushed to be like a main point. It was kind of almost like, it seems the way it was presented in the movie, it was almost unconscious, that it just kind of goes along and it encourages the viewer to think like, well, yeah, it's obvious he had no choice. But there definitely is the decision there to be like, you know, how do you go about it?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting that it was in the movie. That point was never questioned. It was like, yeah, this is my dream. Okay, this is his dream. Okay, now it's gotta fucking fulfill his dream, man. And then it's like, yeah, yes, of course. And then, you know, it's really fascinating how, I mean, the amount of conflict, compromise. I mean, he really creates a lot of shit in his reality in order to manifest his dream.
For sure. I mean, if you look at it, you know, he doesn't really seem. You don't even when he, you know, he hooks up with the girl there, Uma Thurman. He doesn't even seem, you know, quite relaxed or at ease within that or afterwards. Like as soon as it's, you know, done, you see him like rushing out to the beach and he's scrubbing himself, and he's just like stressed all the time, like
Yeah,
just kind of like, you know, that paranoia
yeah,
is kind of induced.
yeah,
And yeah, I think that kind of exhibits it really well, that even after he has sex, he can't even kind of, you know, like lay there and share a smile with the girl. It's like fucking out to, you know, cover his tracks, and you see him picking
yeah,
up his hairs off the bed, and
yeah.
yeah, just
I
so
mean,
go
yeah,
ahead.
no,
Okay, I was just gonna say, you know, so it just kind of, he has like it's just the whole methodology almost, if you will, through the movies. It's kind of like very, you know, childish, toddler like, where I want this, this is what I want, and I want it now, I want to get it, and
yeah,
kind of being so tunnel vision within your own thought that you have like a shitty length of time for, well, until you get your way, basically. Like you know, the scenario where a child in a way will be manipulative to the parent and, you know, whine or throw a hissy fit, even though they don't like that, because maybe they know that doing that they can influence or manipulate their parent, kind of thing. And he did that to kind of a more elaborate degree, where, you know, he was manipulating within the system that was set up to just kind of support his ends at whatever cost, kind of thing.
and I mean, it's cool to see that, you know, I think that the movie also, the underlying symbology is like the path of the careerist, because I mean, I think I haven't been there myself, but I can imagine that, you know, in order to get to the top, that's a little bit of what you face. You know, each
Oh
day
yeah.
you have to scrub, you're fucking stressed out, and you know, you prepare yourself always perfect, like no mistake anywhere, because then you're maybe caught out, then you lose your dream. And so all of your life, in fact, becomes but a, you know, it's a scenery for this one goal that you have somewhere in the future. And really, I mean, it's quite absurd, because then he gets into space and then he comes back and continues his life. It's not like it's done there. It probably finds out he wants to go to space again, or so. You know, it's interesting how we tend to compromise our real physical reality that we have here, because we're so possessed with dream, desire, idea, etc.
It kind of, it showcases, it's kind of another underlying thing that happens that just, you know, you don't really bring too much attention to it in the movie, is that you know, there's a scene early on where you know, he rips his face out of like the family photo kind of thing, and then he just kind of takes off, and he's basically just cuts off his connection with his, you know, his family. And you know, before that, to a certain extent, uh, you know, even though, let's say, there was rivalry between the brothers, they seem to, you know, still get along and have a sense of camaraderie there. But it's just kind of like that point is taken hold where, you know, he wants what he wants, and based on the information that his family has, and the common cultural belief is that, you know, younger brother is just a superior specimen, and he's going to have more potential, and, you know, basically just the justified finger pointing, like, you know, that's just the reality. You are what you are, and because he's not being told what he likes, you know, it's just kind of like, you know, fuck you, family, like, I'm out of here, see ya. And there's just that dissonance there for forevermore. And because he's now on the lam in a way, basically deciding to go like underground in the system, he doesn't really have any relationships with anyone. You know, even Jerome there, it's kind of like, you know, Jerome is the dude, you know, he's kind of like a lost cause as well in a way, and you don't even ever really see them kind of, you know, shooting the shit together, like hanging out, sharing some good times.
Yeah.
It's just very kind of lost in that runaway train of thought.
Yeah, and you know, now when you say it, I remember that, for example, when he's cleaning, in his first cleaning job, like, the most of the scenes is where he's standing looking at or being distracted by thinking about things, about either flying away in a rocket, looking at the people through the window going up. So it's like he's never here. It's like always in there, in his future, his desire.
Yeah, totally. Like it's just, yeah, like a total mind job the whole time, where just, you know, I got this thought and this feeling attached to this thought, and just, yeah, tunnel vision within it, like down the rabbit hole he goes, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let's move to another area here. The point of genetics and basically tinkering with genetics. What are your viewpoints on this? Because I know I definitely think there's some cool stuff there. I mean, I don't think anybody obviously wants to be born, you know, with an inferior genetic makeup, so to speak. Like, there is a lot of, you know, unfortunate births that happen in a particular way. I mean, it's not to, you know, once somebody is born in a particular way, belittle them or anything, but obviously, you know, who doesn't want to be, you know, strong and well built and built to last, basically, like a, you know, a quality product, a product that's built to last, as opposed to, you know, break down, kind of planned obsolescence in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's this point of eugenics, I think it's called as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's since the Second World War, it's been really this
taboo.
Yeah, like, no, don't go there. But if we look at the principles, I find that it's common sense. You know, it's obvious that if we are able to plan a genetically superior human being, you know, we should do it, because it's what we would do with anything else. You know, we do it with dogs, we do it with horses, you know, fine. There is not this kind of, my God, you don't allow those horses to love each other and breathe with each other freely. So, yeah.
I just think of the point, like, imagine your parents having the conversation with you, being like, you know, sorry, Victor, it was our belief that, you know, you shouldn't be made to be, you know, have so much potential in all the best possible ways. We thought it would just be better for you to be produced by like a random sequence of events of our, you know, our body's parts coming together, as opposed to hand picking our best traits of each of us and merging the absolute best.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that would kind of induce the questioning, like, well, what the fuck, Mom? what the fuck, Dad? Are you fucking kidding me? You're telling me that, you know, the way I was built could have been like athletic to the max, where that, you know, I would see definite results for my actions, or that my vision would be crystal clear, and you know, all these things. It's really kind of, you know, boggling when you consider that regard. I mean, even to the point of like dating and how people get into relationships. I mean, in a sense, I see that could be like, you know, potential like easy icebreakers for people. I know there's like in popular society, there's often a lot of you know, dissonance with people like having even just the self-confidence to just kind of talk to each other and get to know each other. Like you know, alcohol, for instance, which is a depressant, is such a popular social lubricant for people to kind of open up and be used as an icebreaker to, you know, relax enough so that they can talk to one another, kind of thing. Whereas, you know, if it was just kind of like simply the point of you know, genetics, and in the movie they kind of dismiss it, like, you know, they blow it away like, oh, it doesn't matter, you're like whatever. And, you know, maybe there's an underlying connotation to that, to just kind of support that idea that, you know, maybe we shouldn't look at the facts of what's best. We should just, you know, go with our feeling, kind of thing, if we feel this way or not, instead of it being like a practical starting point, like, you know, hey, I'm checking out your information and you can see my information based on what I'm reading here. Looks like there's like tremendous potential, and then it kind of like opens up like that. It seems almost, you know, too easy. And the way we've been like structured within our mind consciousness is that like we're rooted on the whole conflict thing, and that, you know, there's like a disbelief that, no, it just, even that very saying, like, that'd be too easy, like life can't be too easy, we need more adversity and struggle and despair. And that's what makes things interesting, because, you know, they're not good all the time.
Yeah, but it is that kind of, you know, faith thingy that is honored. It's faith, and then it's like magic. Because, you know, it's like, I want to believe, but it's like, why? You know, if, you know, I find that what they do in the movie with the straws of hair, you know, when they say, this is my genetic makeup, this is my, what they do is like, oh, I dropped it, and they don't compare their genetics like that. But if we look at it from common sense, I mean, okay, you're an individual, you are made up of certain information, that's who you are. Now you come together with me, I'm made up with certain information. If there would be an effective way to sort of check, okay, is our information compatible? Oh, cool, let's go. That doesn't mean that like there can't be any intimacy, or, for lack of a better word, like soulfulness and magic. I mean, you know, magic would be simply enjoying the potential of the creation we can have together. Not this kind of, well, now I'm gambling and it's so fun, what's going to happen here? Whoa. Because like that's kind of how we do it today.
For sure. And it's kind of like you said, this airy-fairy way where it's kind of, you know, believe that, well, you know, if it was meant to be, it was meant to be, kind of thing, where there's no real direction for creating, you know, the potential way or whatnot, kind of thing. Yeah. Hey, we have a question that's coming here from Rebecca Dalmas. Interesting, because I have heard the statement, look to the mother or father to see how the person will age. Have you experienced this in your life? Let's start with you, Victor.
No, I haven't. So if you do have any experience there.
Yeah, definitely. I've experienced this like multiple times. I guess I became, this is like Freud talk, where often it's suggested that your partner will be like your mother, you'll be like your father, kind of thing, and it's a pattern play out thing. And I just kind of like took that in as like, okay, there must be something to this. You know, Freud is like regarded as like the godfather of psychology or whatever, so clearly this pattern is played out, kind of thing. And I can recall just kind of like well, I basically just accepted this information as like, okay, that's just kind of the way it is. And I can recall like after starting a relationship where, you know, I was kind of like looking, and maybe my viewing was tainted a little bit because I had this information which, you know, seemed to just, that's just how it is. So I kind of just took it on as like, okay. But where I would look into my partner and I would see like a lot of similar traits that, let's say, my mother had. And I remember the first time I was really looking at it, the girl that I had been seeing was like going to nursing school, for instance. And my mom, you know, that happened to be her profession. And then it was kind of even like a little creepy because we were just kind of like joking around one day like this. We hadn't known each other that long, and she's like asking me like you know, to guess her middle name. And you know, in my mind I'm like, oh well, it's got to be like my mom's name because this is all like part of the pre-planned programming that you're like my mom because, you know, da 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 da. And so I just like, you know, assumed that her middle name had to be my mother's like first name. And you know, so I said that, and she's like, yeah, that's it. And so that kind of so that was kind of like a serious, you know, what the fuck, holy shit, is this actually the case? You know, I was like a little bit kind of like, oh yeah, like let's really test this theory here. And so it's just kind of like, you know, me and my ego was just like, oh yeah, like you know, I totally knew that. It makes perfect sense. Like blah 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 blah. And yeah, so you know, that was kind of fascinating. And then yeah, like I would say I've gone also to the other extreme within that point where I looked for like a partner maybe that was like the total opposite, seeing that I'm maybe programmed to align with someone who's like my mom, and just kind of always having a bit of a rebellion character within me, like a very inquisitive, questioning nature about myself. You know, I challenge the point and look to seek someone out that was, well, basically not like my mom per se. And yeah, kind of within that, I looked at not so much, you know, the great traits that I see about my mother per se, but would look at the points about my mom that, you know, I deemed that, you know, were less than stellar, less than cool. And so I made, you know, look to make sure that I'd find a partner who did not exhibit those as like their main points kind of thing. Yeah, I've definitely bounced around with that a little bit. Cool. So that's, yes, that's the only question we've had come in so far. Another interesting thing in the movie that, you know, it kind of gets quickly passed a little bit is, I mean, I didn't even really, well, I don't remember thinking about it the first time I watched the movie, because I'd watched it a number of years ago and then just watched it recently, was the whole blood point in the beginning with the brother, where, you know, he makes that clear that he couldn't perform or do, you know, function without like the little help of, you know, his brother's blood kind of thing. And I just kind of found that like a fascinating point, because the way the story moves on at the same time, there's a bit more emphasis on like the whole notion that, you know, your perseverance, like your will, like giving it all you got kind of thing. But the very like starting point is recognized that it wouldn't even come close for me being able to do any of this if I didn't have, you know, like a little help, a little assistance. Just talking about that now makes me, you know, think of like, you know, drugs or steroids or something in society kind of thing. Like, you know, you're not going to get the results unless
unless it's
get
also
the edge.
Like, you're not gonna get through unless you do a little damage, or
Yeah.
it's like accepting the point that in order to get there, I have to play the game, so to speak.
Definitely, definitely. Which, I mean, is kind of an interesting point within the system, because there's very much, ways about, well, but we live in a world where there's certain physical limitations at this point. It's very much a structured reality, and you're working within the structures. Yes, I would say, uh, points can be challenged and points can be pushed. How much they can be pushed, I would say, there's even limits within points being pushed to a certain degree. Like, it's not, as of yet, a no limit reality in any way.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me, I saw something a little while ago about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it was talking about him when he was a bodybuilder, and steroids were legal back then. They weren't like deemed to be illegal or whatever for the competitions and stuff. And he openly admits that it was definitely like a necessary part for him to get to the size and shape that he did for his training. Now, he says he didn't use them that often, and that he used them like before competitions to blah 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 blah, like maintain da 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 da. But that it was like a necessary point for him to use in order to get where he had to get. And yeah, that just kind of reflects in the movie a little bit, where he needs the blood. Which reminds me, you kind of touched on it earlier, about Vincent going to space and all. We don't really see him up in space too much, or maybe the potential disastrous results of lying this whole way to get there, that maybe his heart explodes and he fucking dies instantly, and there's this like huge disaster up there, and the whole ship is compromised because this jackass was lying the whole time to get there, and the rocket ship explodes and everybody dies because this one lie was perpetuated the whole way through.
Yeah. I mean, because, sometimes in terms of, for example, if we take it back to our reality and our system, when we apply for a job, then sometimes we might not get it, but the reason is not because the person at the other end is evil, or he's, not seeing us as bad. As he's seeing us as, bad. It might just be because we didn't fit the qualifications, and that the screening process was deliberate. For example, in this movie, the reason why you have to have a great physique and be able to handle yourself under pressure and such was probably due to the fact that they were going up in space, and to deal with that, you had to have such a physique.
Totally. I mean, yeah, that really comes down to a point of practicality, that going into space, there's going to be, well, as we've been led to believe, I don't know firsthand because I haven't traveled to outer space that I can recall anyways. Maybe I have and I just forgot about it. But to my recollection and what I've been told is, yeah, there's a certain degree of physical fitness required to deal with the motion up there, or the lack of motion, whatever it is, the gravity effect.
It's like this point that it's quite cool with animals, because you don't see a gorilla trying to be like a bird, for example, or you don't see a fish wanting to be like a wolf, because the design and purpose is different. So that's also something to learn to see. Where is it that I can place myself, where I would be effective, considering who I am, what my resources are, my body, my intellectual, mental capacity. So we don't just go with this, you know, I'm going to be that kind of mentality.
Totally. I mean, that kind of leads into, you know, practicality, solution based, um, where, you know, you're not competing. And you kind of mentioned this to me before the hangout. It's, you know, it's to work with what's practical here. I mean, a bird, and you have wings, you know, you use your wings to fly. Whereas, you know, you're a walrus, you don't have wings to fly, kind of thing. But you're a swimming mammal, kind of thing. Whereas, you know, the bird is a flying creature.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to mention, um, you gave the example about Vincent, and basically how he could have totally, you know, gone about his ways differently than that which he did. Do you want to elaborate on that for everyone here? I'll
Yes.
give you the credit of sharing your
Okay.
cool perspective.
Yeah, but so obviously Vincent was quite, you know, intellectual. He had capacity to reason effectively, though he didn't have, you know, that blood access that he required. But he got into these cleaning companies and, you know, he acquired skills in cleaning. He said he cleaned 1,000 toilets. And I mean, so here, a resource that he had was, okay, he has probably the intellectual potential to create his own company. He had the experience of cleaning. He had seen, you know, how to structure cleaning, how to do it effectively, and potentially having his own company, he could earn quite a lot of money. And I mean, then the potential opens up that maybe instead of actually going into space himself, he could, you know, make it as a hobby of himself, study space in books, which was what he seemed to enjoy to read a lot, and maybe get his own laboratory and telescope. And so that would be a way of sort of creating and getting into his life what he enjoyed and wanted without creating all of this compromise in his life.
Definitely. Yeah, Victor, you're cutting out a little bit there, so I'll just quickly paraphrase what you just said there for anybody who
Mhm.
didn't catch that.
Okay.
So basically, Victor is referring to Vincent, the main character in the movie, and how, you know, based on his positioning and his genetics, he's positioned as a, you know, like a janitor, a cleaner type thing, and he actually is really good within that, and he quite excels within it. He has a certain regard for the work he does, and he likes to do top quality work. Victor pointed out that, you know, maybe it would have been more supportive for him, and he could have had more fulfillment in his own life if he had took on the point of creating his own, you know, cleaning business and really pushing, developing that. And by going about it that way, he could have, you know, made a lot of money for himself and got himself like a position of basically status where he has leisure as a result of creating a lot of money for himself. And he could have totally pushed the astronaut thing or the space inquisitiveness as a point of, you know, an active hobby that he's investigating and whatnot, and really, you know, see what potential could come out as a result of just basically using his creative mind that he clearly had, and just pushing the potential that way. And in that, he's not really, you know, basically living a stressed out existence, which he did the whole way through. I mean, we even see up to the very last minute when he gets on the spaceship, you know, he's freaking out, paranoid that the doctor's going to bust him, and he has just about a meltdown before you see that doctor's been this whole time, kind of thing. The doctor thinks it's cool that you're getting through because his son, and he wants to help his son to be able to cheat it through, kind of thing. Though it's kind of
Yeah.
more regarded as like, you know, the winning way, the potential that he's pushing himself beyond. Yeah. Okay. Hangout, I believe we've gone over our time here, Victor. Time has just flown by
Yeah.
chatting with you here.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we go?
I mean, it would be the point maybe of taking this back to oneself in one's practical life, to instead of getting caught in the idea of I must be that, just that single one thing, and in that process compromising and disregarding one's world, to instead work with what is here and primarily look at what is practical.
I like that. I like that. And I definitely agree with that message. And yeah, support that as the final words here is sticking with practicality and realizing that, you know, even though you really want something and there's other things in play in your world, that, you know, it is possible to juggle multiple points at the same time. You don't have to drop everything else just to fulfill, you know, one goal, one point. You can totally multitask and juggle. I mean, juggling does exist for a reason. We can totally orchestrate the orchestration of our life through proper and effective organization. Cool, Victor. Thanks for being here. And that concludes our hangout for today. All right, everybody. See ya.
Bye.